Nia Malika Henderson is a CNN senior political analyst. Alice Stewart is a CNN political commentator and Republican strategist. And Hillary Rosen is a CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist. Welcome to you all. Let me start here with you, Alice, and your thoughts on another element of Melanie's fantastic interview with Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy, in which he says this is job one for a Republican-led House. Let's play it.
Well, there's a number of things. I think stay in Mexico, you have to right off the bat. First thing you'll see is a bill to control the border first. You've got to get control over the border. You've had almost 2 million people just this year alone coming across. But a part that hasn't been written about, when I came here more than a year and a half ago, it's the first time it really got mentioned, the people we were catching on the terrorist watch list. You know, there's been 98 people on the terrorist watch list. It's very difficult to get on that. And we caught them coming across the border just this year.
Okay, so we know that the border is part of the Republican trinity right now: crime, the economy, and the border. Why start there?
Well, that's, again, part of the triad of issues that they're focusing on. And the border has been something that has been top of mind for Republicans for quite some time.
But the economy is the top concern across all boards.
Absolutely. But he is making border, in terms of securing the border, a priority for many reasons, for the illegal immigration, for terrorists coming across this country. We also have the fentanyl crisis, the human trafficking. That is one part of it. But first and foremost, Republicans across the board are looking at ways they can fight inflation, reducing the economic concerns that Americans are having. And a big part of that is outlined in his commitment to America. The top prong of his commitment to America that McCarthy put forward was about addressing the economy and implementing pro-growth tax policies and doing more to explore energy exploration in this country to help the economy. And also just putting in policies in place that reduce government spending, reduce wasteful spending, and all of these will help the economy, which that is the top of mind issue for voters across the country.
Hillary, if I can get you to address what we heard from Speaker McCarthy there also on, what a Speaker McCarthy would be pushing for if Republicans take control. Take control, want to be Speaker McCarthy. And that is using the debt ceiling as leverage. And one way to push cost cuts in entitlement, very popular entitlement programs like Medicare and Social Security. I'm wondering if the president missed an opportunity in defending the debt ceiling when he had people in his own party, even his own Treasury Secretary, say that she supports abolishing the debt ceiling.
Look, you know, we've been through this with the Republicans before. They actually don't have an economic plan. And the last time they were in charge, their entire economic plan was tax cuts for the rich and corporations. So, you know, this notion that somehow they alone are going to fix the economy is nonsense. And I think what we've seen is, look, President Biden has done more for energy independence than the last 3 presidents put together. They've allowed more drilling. They've created more alternative energy opportunities. So the economy is a complicated situation, and Kevin McCarthy doesn't have any answers. That's why they're focusing on the border. That's why they're trying to scare people. But again, when they were in charge, they didn't pass a border bill then either. So, you know, they really don't have a record to stand on other than a bad record. And I think, you know, voters are going to have a choice on this, but it's you know, not something that any of us are fooled about when Kevin McCarthy talks about his big ambition.
But if you could just answer the question specifically related to the debt ceiling. Did the president, does this administration give Republicans ammunition when the president says that he supports raising the debt ceiling and having a debt ceiling when his own Treasury Secretary and other economists and other Democrats say they support doing away with it?
It's a good question. And I think, you know, the Treasury Secretary is uniquely non-political. It's what we all appreciate most about her. And so she said, in a perfect world, we would not have a debt ceiling. I think the problem is once members of Congress have a taste of some power, taking it away is virtually impossible. The president was in, you know, the Senate for a very long time. He understands that would actually never fly. I don't think, you know, this is one of those things like a virus. It just pops up year after year after year. Leverage on the debt ceiling is kind of a political tradition, and they're going to have to deal with it.
Nia, let's turn to the former president, and sources telling CNN that he and some aides are discussing potentially announcing a 2024 run tonight.
Yes.
On the eve of the midterm election. Election seasons don't just butt together one another now. They overlap.
Yeah, they overlap, but particularly when you're Donald Trump and you're thirsty for attention and you want to suck all the oxygen out of the room and take credit possibly for Republican wins. We all know that so many Trump-style hand-picked candidates are on the ballot on Tuesday, and folks are voting for that now. So yeah, he wants to essentially suck up all the oxygen. Also, I think he wants to clear the field, right? There's this notion that maybe Ron DeSantis might run. You saw him nickname him Ron DeSanctimonious. Mike Pompeo seems to be exploring a run. We'll see what sort of nickname he gets, if he gets one. Mike Pence as well, Donald Trump's former vice president. So yes, I mean, this is classic Donald Trump. It is making Republicans, I think privately, Alice, you can speak to this, tear out their hair. They don't want this to happen right now. You know, it's been rumored that maybe he would have, already announced, he'll announce after, but this will be something to see. He also just wants us to pay attention to whatever his speech is tonight, right? And cover it live on television.
Yeah, I think whether or not he announces tonight is beside the point. He just wants us to be talking about him today all day long. And the reality is, many Republicans across the country do not want him to get back in, because they were ready to turn the page on Donald Trump. They were ready to put him in the rearview mirror. And then he has reemerged himself after the Mar-a-Lago searches came about. But the truth is, Republicans have done well to date, and polling looks as though we will do well on Election Day because Donald Trump was not in the picture, because we were not constantly talking about his tweets and his comments and his actions. Republicans were able to focus on the policies that were important to the American people, top of mind, immigration, inflation, crime, and issues that people are really concerned with. And we were fortunate that Republicans across the board focused on the issues that were important to them. The Democrats tended to have the eye off the ball, focusing on other issues that weren't top of mind. But I can tell you this, there are a lot of Republicans that are hoping we can at least get through Election Day without Donald Trump putting his name in the mix, because we're poised to do well on Election Day. But regardless of what the numbers are, regardless of what the polls show, everyone should get out and vote. And that's the most important thing I think we can say today across the board, is to vote.
I'm going to agree
Hillary,
with Alice on this.
Yeah.
Well, which is really this, that look, they've talked about Donald Trump more on MSNBC than they have on Fox News in the last year. Let's be real. I mean, that, in many respects, his life as the left's boogeyman has kept him alive, and that has kept his base very enthusiastic. And, that's sort of at our own peril when we've done that. And I think that in many respects, Republicans and Democrats and centrist Democrats and independents, they do want to turn the page. I think a food fight in a Republican primary is good for Democrats. So if he wants to go and make a mess of this, have at it. But I will say that, we have kept a lot of oxygen on our side in Donald Trump's, balloon.
But listen, I mean, Republican voters still are very emotionally attached to Donald Trump. If you look at all of the early polling, he is the clear favorite of any of the challengers that might come and run in 2024. It's not the left that is keeping him alive. It is very much Republican base voters still very much like Donald Trump, and they want to see him be president again.
And many of these candidates in these close elections are Trump supporters or Trump-picked candidates.
Right. And Nia is right. I'm sorry.
The fealty that many of these candidates have offered to Donald Trump, I think, has been, extremely telling, considering how the, overall Republican Party feels about him.
Yeah, go
Right,
ahead.
and I think the Trump's base and his core source of support, they are with him. They are not going anywhere. But we're doing well in this midterm election because we have appealed to independents and undecided voters who are less concerned with Donald Trump's past grievances, more concerned with their personal economic status moving forward. And that's been the winning message. And Donald Trump being out of the picture has been a boon and a benefit for Republicans in terms of staying on message about the economy.
Alice, 5 seconds on this. If he announces tonight, you think that moves any votes tomorrow?
I don't think so. I think at this stage, we've had already 41 million people have already voted and they've made up their mind. And I think that speaks volumes to people's confidence in our democratic process. I don't think that will change anyone's mind. I think that will help Donald Trump in his mind. But voters, I think at this point, have made up their mind.
All right.
One
Stewart?
quick point, which is that, you know, Democrats have mostly voted early. Republicans are depending on everyone going to the polls tomorrow. You never know what a Trump announcement could affect.
Yeah.
And one last quick point.
Our producers are getting angry.
We got the wrap a minute and a half ago.
I just want to say congrats to Bianna on the New York Marathon yesterday. Great
Oh,
job.
Thank you. Thank you.
We'll get into
I
that a
didn't
little
pay her
later.
to say that. Alice Stewart, Hillary Rosen, and Nia Malika Henderson, thank you.